Getting really nervous, man. There's hardly any book left, right? A year ago, I set off on a journey. I'm on a journey to the Dark Tower. You coming? There were some high points and some low points, the regulators. And today, we reached the Dark Tower. By the way, see Stephen King there at the top? He's been joining me along the whole journey, this little silly bookmark. I love it. Okay, so there's a lot that happens in this book and I can't wait to dive into it. And also I've got some exciting news. I think you're going to like this. I have read this much of the book, and that's what I'm initially going to be reviewing is this section of the book. And then I'm going to sit in front of the camera and I'm going to read these last 200 or so pages. And so you're going to get to see my live reaction to the ending of the Dark Tower. I'm very nervous, very nervous. Lots happened. There's a lot to get into. Also, obviously, there's going to be spoilers and everything like that, right? It's the last book in the series, so I'm going to be spoiling. If you haven't already read it, then I would suggest you can click up here. I think it's up here, where you can go to the beginning of the journey and you can read through the Dark Tower with me, the extended universe. It's about 23 books. All right, so let's do this one last time. So in Song of Susanna, we left off on a bit of a cliffhanger, right? So you've got Eddie and Roland who are trying to reunite with the rest of the quartet. You've got Father Callahan and Jake that are outside the Dixie Pig, and their plan is to try and save Susanna / Mia from the Cantoy. And then you've got Susanna and Mia who are, or Susanna / Mia, who are about to give birth to Mordred, who is the son of, it's so convoluted, but the son of Roland, but also the son of the Crimson King. So the first big thing that happens is the scene with Father Callahan. A lot of you, if you've been watching my videos, will know that Father Callahan is actually one of my favorite Stephen King characters. I originally obviously met him in Salem's Lot, and I reviewed that book. And in that book, I was so sad about his ending. You know, he was left a broken man, seemingly about to wander around America, lost his faith, lost everything at the hands of these vampires. And so this scene where Father Callahan gets an opportunity to redeem himself and give himself the ending that he deserved was bittersweet. It's also just a really cool scene as well. You know, you've got Jake and Father Callahan that are outside the Dixie Pig, and they have this nice moment where both of them reflect on their individual journeys and what's brought them to this moment. Father Callahan puts his hand on Jake's shoulder, and he kind of he has like a real grandfatherly moment with him. But also, he asks Jake, will this make me a gunslinger? You know, even he's on board with the whole midworld gunslinger stuff. So, and it really feels like he knows that it's all about to end for him. He knows he's reached the end of his story. And inside, the vampires and the Cantoy have kind of teamed up. And, I was sad to see Father Callahan die, but I was also happy for him that he went out like a gunslinger. He had his big moment of redemption, you know, as all of these creatures are just chomping into his neck and clawing at his flesh. He's able to say, "Hail Roland, hail gunslinger, may you reach the tower and may you breach it and walk to the top." And then boom, he goes out on his own terms. He atones, he says the Lord's Prayer, and yeah, he just has this epic ending. One of the things that I really appreciate as a reader is just knowing that none of the main characters have plot armor. And so seeing Father Callahan go out this early in the game, it was just like, it served as a reminder that everyone is vulnerable. We meet up briefly with Eddie and Roland, and they're kind of like having a vision of what's happening. Eddie needs to get the sales document to Susanna's godfather. His name is Moses Carver. And he wants He needs to let him know that he wants him to take ownership and that Odetta is still alive. He wants him to take ownership of the tech corp. It's all essential, I think. All of this stuff is essential, but it's just not really that interesting to me. You know, that part I was like, all right, yeah, we're setting up the corporation to protect the Rose. Yeah. I get it. All right, let's get back to it. You know, the next big scene is Mordred's birth. And I'm not sure exactly what I was expecting in this scene, but when Mia gives birth to a boy who then kind of sprouts tumors, and out of those tumors grow big, hairy spider legs, and then he starts to suck the life force directly out of Mia's body, and she kind of turns into a husk. I was just like, ah, gross. You know, think about it. Mia sacrificed her immortality to bring this creature into the world and to protect it. And it repays her by just devouring her. And you can say, oh, you know, Mia was naive to make that deal. But I think it's probably more accurate to say that she was just really desperate. She just wanted so badly to be a mother. So yeah, she had kind of she had a bit of a sad ending, but it felt inevitable, right? What I like about this scene is that it's just a great introduction to Mordred. He's not just a typical Stephen King villain. He is kind of like a symbol of corruption to Stephen King's multiverse. He's prophesized to be like the harbinger of destruction, also potentially Roland's downfall as well. And so I thought it was just like a effective and like a really grim way to introduce this new dark force. Now, next up is a scene that I did not enjoy, which is Jake's escape from the Cantoy. There's kind of like this cool concept that happens just before the part that I don't like. And that's when Jake walks past this doorway into another time and another universe. And they're selling tickets to New York City in September of 2001. And they're selling tickets to an event that happens on the 11th. There's this sign that says, come and get your souvenirs, last chance to get tickets for this wonderful event, you know? I just thought, you know, that's such a cool concept for a book. Like, I would read a book all about kind of like time tourists or something like that, you know, from the Stephen King universe, people that are like traveling through time, going to different events. I know that also there's another book, and I know I'm going to mess up the title. Is it 11/22/63? Is that the date? But yeah, I think that's the title, and that has like a similar concept. I haven't read that book yet by Stephen King, but I'm going to be reading it next year. And yeah, I would just read a book that was all about a time tourist going all through the multiverse. That would be so cool. That would be amazing. Plus, it would give an opportunity to meet all different Stephen King characters as well. Yeah, just purely multiverse based. I would eat that up. Immediate buy. The part that I didn't like at all was when Jake comes across this kind of hallway and he sees this cartoon dinosaur from that used to scare him as a child, and Oi can't see it. And so they switch bodies. Like, Oi jumps into the head of Jake and Jake jumps into the head of Oi, so that Oi, as kind of using Jake's body, can walk through the hallway so that they can escape the cartoon dinosaur. No, we're not. No, I didn't want to do that. Sorry. No, I didn't want to do that. I don't think, unless I'm misremembering, I don't think that we established the rules that they could do that, right? So where did this come from? This body switching thing? Like, I don't like when things can just happen, because it makes me think, oh, then there's never going to be any problems that they come across that they can't solve by just kind of coming up with some new magic, you know? That's why I prefer kind of hard magic systems in fantasy, because it sets boundaries for the main characters. Whereas if you just have, you know, you can just do anything, completely soft magic systems, Nah, it just becomes unrealistic and it lowers the stakes. Like when I read Stephen King, I definitely suspend my disbelief more than I would with other authors, but there is a limit, right? I mean, and this part of the book just made me nervous because I was thinking, I mean, I'm up for weird. I like Stephen King, so I'm up for some weird, but there's weird and then there's weird, you know? And I like this kind of weird. It's not long before the quartet are all reunited, and it's just a really nice moment, especially since you bear in mind that in the last book, all of this group just didn't even see each other. So Eddie is like swinging Susanna around in his arms, and Roland and Jake are just like embracing, and Jake calls Roland father, and Roland really likes it. It's just such a sweet father and son moment. And at this point, I started to think to myself, if Roland betrays Jake again, I'm not going to be able to handle it, right? I actually know what happens at this point. But yeah, just in that moment, I was starting to put together a theory. And my theory was that Roland was going to be in a similar situation to what he was in The Gunslinger, where he let Jake fall. And the message was either going to be that Roland is a gunslinger and he always will be a gunslinger and nothing can change him, and he lets Jake fall again, or that he actually has grown and he's learned what it means to be in a quartet and he saves Jake. That's what I thought was going to happen. Obviously, that's not what happened. And unless, I don't know, in this book, maybe Jake can come back in the last couple hundred pages. But yeah, I know what happens to Jake at this point. The group all have this discussion about all of the coincidences that allowed them to go through their journey and succeed. Like, for example, the skull padder, Jake finding the skull padder, or Jake finding the key. And they think that these are like little gifts that have been left for them by Stephen King. And then I can't remember if it's Jake or Eddie, but one of them starts to talk about the concept that some writers like to use a deus ex machina as a way. It's like a get out of jail free card. It's just a way of them kind of cheating to get their characters out of trouble. Sometimes it's unearned. But they say that Stephen King actually isn't cheating in this case, or they kind of come to that conclusion that Stephen King isn't cheating, but rather he is channeling uh, he's channeling this and receiving instructions from another higher force. And this is well cheeky of Stephen King, I think. You know, he's kind of excusing himself. He's using his own characters to excuse him for using a deus ex machina. Kind of funny, but I don't know. Does it work? I think maybe this is the only context, the only story in which a deus ex machina might actually work. And it's just been kind of clumsily but effectively constructed by Stephen King. Anyway, so the scene wraps up where the quartet decide that they're going to go to Thunderclap and they're going to set the breakers free. Either set them free or maybe them, whatever's easier, basically. Next, we catch up with Mordred, and he's back in his baby body. And it's kind of like a funny scene where it shows how frustrating it is for him to be in his baby body rather than his kind of like spider form. He's completely reliant on this robot that's serving him and cleaning him and keeping him upright, right? Just he can't even sit upright. That's how little control he has of himself. But he is growing rapidly. He thinks he'll be a toddler by the end of the day. He eats a Billy Bumbler. Ugh. But that's just the appetizer, because who should show up but my old mate Randall Flagg / Walter / the Man in Black. And he has a bit of a messy end. This scene really surprised me, much more than the death of Father Callahan, which, as I mentioned, kind of felt inevitable. I thought that this book was going to end with a major showdown between the gunslinger and the man in black. I know that the Crimson King is the main villain, but he's kind of like more of a concept, more of an idea, a shadow that's looming over them. The man in black is Roland's oldest enemy. I mean, think about it. This whole series began with the man in black fled across the desert and the gunslinger followed. And I thought that there was going to be some kind of symmetry, where it says, I don't know, some line off the top of my head, the man in black fled and the gunslinger caught him. Bit of a cheesy line, I know, but you get the sentiment of what I'm going for. I also really like the man in black as well. He's maybe my favorite Stephen King villain. And so to have this new evil show up and consume him so easily, and gruesomely as well, he makes him pull out his own eyes. Oh, no, the worst. And it's described in such graphic detail, I can't remember exactly the line, but it's something along the lines of the world disappeared with the sound of a pop or something. Oh, no. It was just a bit of a downer. But I think this scene kind of demonstrated two things, and that is that Randall Flagg was never as clever as he thought he was. And also, Mordred is a very powerful enemy. Next up is a scene that put a massive smile on my face. I started off happy and I just kept getting happier and happier as it went along. And that is when I got reunited with my old mate Ted Brotigan from Hearts in Atlantis. Oh man, it felt so good to be reunited with him because we've just lost Father Callahan and he was kind of like the granddad of the group, right? He's the grandfather of the group. And now to be reunited with Ted Brotigan, he kind of fulfills a similar role. He's that old sage, wise head, to kind of oversee everything. Oh man, I was so happy to see him again. He thinks that he's Bobby from Hearts in Atlantis. He thinks Jake's Bobby when he first sees him. So obviously it must be that those two are twinners in some way. And then also we get reunited with Dinky Earnshaw. It took me a little bit longer to remember who Dinky was. I was kind of like, I know this name, Dinky Earnshaw. But then I remembered, oh yeah, he's from that short story, Everything's Eventual. Do you remember when he could draw like symbols and make things happen? And so that connection was really cool as well, kind of seeing that he actually was a breaker. Fantastic. I think this is why it's important to kind of read the multiverse and why it's been so satisfying for me to read the multiverse, so that every now and then you get reunited with old friends. It's really fantastic. Speaking of which, you know what I'm about to say. Roland meets one of the breakers who apparently seems like they can't speak. His name's Stanley. And then Roland says, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. Look, Roland says, he can speak. Why don't you look me in my face? My old friend, Shimi. Come on, man. And then Shimi turns around and he says, good, come on. And then Shimi turns around and he says, good old Will Dearborn. Oh, man. It's all just happening too quickly, I really love Shimi. And this whole time, Shimi has been blaming himself for the death of Susan Delgado. And Roland says, no, that wasn't your fault. That was Rhea of the Coups, and maybe in some part it was me, but it wasn't you. And he just absolves him of that guilt. And I just thought that was really a nice scene. I think that's the first time that I've cried on the channel. Uh, yeah. I didn't know I would be blubbering in a bloody book review. All right, come on, be a man. It was also really cool to hear about Ted Brautigan, some more of his history, how he became a breaker and what that entails. We also learn about Algol Ciento. I think I'm pronouncing that right. And here they have movies that they show to the breakers, and they can have sim sex with celebrities from the past and the present, and probably the future as well. It's all kind of like non-linear, right? And they can do all of this stuff, kind of have some fun when they're not bringing about the end of existence, which is nice. Perks of the job, you know? There's this interesting scene where they ask Ted a little bit about the Crimson King and why he wants to bring down the tower. And Ted simply says, he's a nutter. You know, he's a lunatic. He's lost his mind. So that's kind of like an interesting motivation. A little while later, the quartet make a plan to liberate the breakers. And slowly, they all start to have this kind of feeling of melancholy. Roland recognizes it and says that it's actually has a name and it's called Karshum. And it is basically a sense that your quartet is about to break or lose a part of itself. And Jake remembers this feeling as the feeling that he had just before Roland abandoned him in The Gunslinger. So obviously I hear this and I start to make little predictions in my head. All right, we're going to lose a member of the quartet. Who's it going to be? And honestly, I thought it was going to be Oi. I was kind of hoping that it would be Oi because I love Oi, right? Don't get me wrong, I love Oi. But losing him in this context is like the least bad situation, right? It's the least bad outcome, I think. But what happens is way worse. It's way worse. It was so satisfying to see them kind of lay out a plan and then implement that plan and see that plan come to fruition. Everything is just, all the pieces are falling in place exactly how they planned it. And the Cantoi are just running around like headless chickens, which they literally almost are in some cases, you know, as Jake's running around with his Ariza plates, slicing off their bird-like heads. It's just absolute chaos. And it gets so chaotic that at one point, Stephen King actually jumps in as a narrator and speaks to us directly. And he says, all right, listen, I'm writing this chaotic part in the book and it's up to you to try and make sense of all of this. And I'm like, all right, Stephen King, thanks so much. But I really hate it when you remind me that I'm reading a book, but thanks though. And the air is just filled with smoke and there's fire alarms going off and bullets are flying and plates are spinning and people are getting run down by fire trucks. And in the middle of it all, Debtor's just there loving it, loving every second of it, just racking up numbers. Boom, 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 boom. And at this point, I'm just buzzing, you know? The quartet are all reunited. They're all embracing one another. And Roland's looking at them like a proud father. And Susanna looks over her shoulder and she says, Roland, come over here, get some of this hug. And he does, and they're all just, yes, we did it. And then Eddie takes one in the nut. Eddie is my man, you know? Maybe my favorite character in the series, probably. And he went down with his gun in his hand, calling out for Susanna. And after this, you know, it's just heartbreaking moment after heartbreaking moment. Jake literally prays to Stephen King like a god to save his friend. And what must that have been like? To be Stephen King right in that scene, having the character communicating directly to you and just having all of this power in your hands to save him and then not saving him. All of Susanna's personalities are coming out to mourn. You've got Debtor, Odetta, Susanna, just all screaming. And there's this nice gentle moment where Roland is explaining to Shimi why everyone is upset, because Shimi's like, we won. Like, what? Why is everyone so sad? And Roland is just so gentle with Shimi, and he's kind of saying, my friend is hurt. And this scene lasted a while. It lasted long enough that it gave me a chance to kind of hope that, oh, Eddie might survive. But then eventually Roland comes to Jake and he says, it's time. He's going. And Roland takes Eddie's hand and he says, it's okay. You can go now. And this is something that I've done with a loved one, and I think that a lot of people have done this as well. And someone is holding on, and it's hurting them, and it's hurting them, and you let them know that it's okay. You can go. We're gonna be all right. And so this scene, I thought was really touching. Man, it's happened again. It's happened again. Come on. And then Eddie says to Roland, he thanks him for giving him a second chance at life. And he calls Roland father. I mean, I'm reacting like this now, just remembering it. You can imagine what I was like when I was reading it. You cried. You cried. Shut up. You cried. And of all the moments that I've experienced across 20 odd books, that is the moment that will stick with me, I think. I don't think I'll ever forget that scene. The death of Eddie Dean. In the following scene, a lot of the breakers, and remember what these breakers are and what they've been doing, and specifically what they've been eating, some of these breakers have the audacity not just to not thank Roland, but to accuse him of taking away their life and their purpose. I tell you something. One of them says, you owe us. What are you going to give us in return? I tell you what I'll give you, mate. I tell you what I'll give you. I'll smack the butt of this gun across your nuts. I'll make you ruin. I'll make you ruin. Shimi helps Roland and Jake and Oi slip into Keystone World. And after this point, it just feels like the pace really picks up. Everything just starts to happen in quick succession. Roland, Jake and Oi are on a mission to try and save Stephen King from Brian Smith. And what was funny about this is that I was familiar with this story. I read Stephen King's autobiography On Writing, and this is the part that I remember the most is when he was hit by a car by this guy who was going into town to get some Mars's bars, and it was so funny seeing this kind of fictionalized, kind of being put into the mind of Brian Smith. He also takes this opportunity, I think Stephen King does, to get some vengeance on Brian Smith. He kind of mocks him. He challenges his mentality. He says like, oh, this is the kind of guy that couldn't change the radio station without looking at the radio. He's the kind of guy that it would never occur to him to bring the meat from the back seat to the front seat so that the dogs couldn't get it. He's just constantly talking about what a moron this guy is. And I couldn't help but think that must have been quite satisfying for Stephen King. At one point, he even compares him to Shimi, which, I don't know how I felt about that. I thought that was a bit of an insult to Shimi, honestly. I'm a big Shimi fan. They meet this woman called Irene, is it Tassenbaum? I think her name is. And she's just a real character. At first, she's apprehensive about everything. She knows that something supernatural is going on. And as she's driving them to the scene where Stephen King gets hit by the car, and yeah, she can tell that something unnatural is going on, and then Oi starts cursing in the back seat, and she's like, "Did that dog just curse?" But she's going with it. She's like, "Listen, this is my life is not that interesting. That stuff like this happens all the time. I'm just going to go with it." This was actually one of my favorite sections in the book, a kind of blending of real people and real events interwoven into a fictional world. It was done in a way that I'd never really experienced before, and it was kind of great. And then Jake sacrifices himself for Stephen King. Like, come on. How much? Eddie and then Jake. Or it felt like immediately afterwards. It kind of felt like it was a little bit too soon, you know? I was still kind of choked up after the death of Eddie. And so when we lost Jake, it felt like it had less of an effect than it should have had. There wasn't enough space between the lashings for me to sort of register the pain, to start to feel new pain. That is until Roland is burying Jake, and Roland says to Oi, uh, don't cry again. Come on. He says to Oi, "Do you want to come and say bye to Jake?" And Oi walks over and he stands by his grave and he sort of lowers his head and he tries to say bye, Jake, but he actually says, "I ache." Niagara Falls. No, 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 no. That was so painful. Even immediately after that, when Roland goes with Irene to the motel, and Irene comes out of the motel and she's still not 100% sure of what's going on, but she looks at Roland and Oi, who are both sat on a curb and they're just crying. And I was thinking, no, no, no. It can't go like this. Like I told you what my theory was, right? Roland was going to be faced with the moral quandary of reaching the tower or saving Jake. I thought that was going to be the ending. I was so sure that was going to be the ending. And so losing Jake was such a shock. I was like, oh, if there's one person that's going to survive, at least to the last few pages, it's going to be Jake. I would have said that Jake would survive even more than I thought Roland would. I thought he's a lock. He's locked in. So yeah, it was really shocking when Jake went. And also, someone says to Jake that he has to look out for a character called Dandello or Dandelo. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. And I don't know who this is at this point, but I know that, or I keep waiting for Patrick Danville to show up. Patrick Danville is a character who just feels so relevant to the series. He was only briefly featured in another book called Insomnia, but I'm certain that he's going to show up in the last few pages, or in the last section that I still have to read. Remember, at this point, when I'm recording this, I still haven't finished the series. Right, I still haven't read the whole book. But yeah, I'm pretty confident that Patrick's going to show up, and maybe he is Dandello. Patrick Danville, Dandello, makes sense. When Roland arrives in New York City, he recognizes it as Lud, or what Lud used to be. Roland sees Brooklyn Bridge and he goes, oh, that's where Gasha from the Wastelands that's where he took Jake to the TikTok man. Do you remember that scene? So that was cool. And at this point, it seems like everyone has done their job. Now they own the property. The tech corporation can protect the Rose in New York City. I also really like that there's a group called the Calvins, and it's their job to kind of cross-reference all of Stephen King's books and see how they are connected to the Dark Tower. I really like that, and because I was thinking, well, I'm a Calvin. you know? And if you're watching this, then you're a Calvin as well, no doubt. I even mention Insomnia and Patrick Danville. And again, that's a character that I just need to know, like, how is Patrick Danville connected to all of this? Is somehow Patrick Danville the Crimson King or something? I don't know. But I'm hoping that he gets introduced really soon in the next few pages, because I'm quite close to the end now, you know, just a few hundred pages from the end. Um, I'll also say that at this point, I am a little bit confused, because it seems like the beams are safe now. So they're not, the breakers aren't breaking the beams anymore because they've been liberated, and the ones that were broken are starting to regenerate. And so it feels like, well, what what's at stake now? You know, I mean, am I to understand that the universe was saved because of a corporate business acquisition and a very one-sided gunfight, and now everything's going to start to settle down? I can't believe that. I mean, that seems a little bit anticlimactic, maybe, and a little bit strange. I can only predict that things are going to fall apart again and the tower will be under threat again somehow. And I suppose the question that I have at this point is, what is the purpose of pursuing the tower at all? Why are we still going to the tower if we've already saved it? It feels like the stakes have been just immeasurably lowered. And I always thought that the quest to repair the beams and actually reaching the tower was kind of interlinked in a way. Like, we had to get to the tower in order to save it. But now it just seems like, no, you don't. You actually don't need to go to the tower anymore. You can if you want, but what's the point? And so, guys, this is it. This is it. I'm about to read these last few pages. I'm currently on page 597. And at this stage, I'm kind of shocked about a few things. I definitely didn't expect the Man in Black to be gone. I kind of expected Eddie to be gone at some point. Totally did not expect Jake to be gone. 100% I'm stunned that the tower has already been saved, or the beams have already been saved, and they're now being regenerated. I've got no idea which direction this story is going to go in. Honestly, I've got no idea. And I am a little bit afraid because of how I've reacted to some of Stephen King's endings. I thought that they were, in some cases, not all cases, but in some cases, a little bit unearned, you know? And so, yeah, please let this be one of the good ones. Let this be one of the good endings. Roland, Susanna, and Oy are the last remaining members of the quartet as they move towards the tower. Let's go. So, the first thing that we come across are three triplets. And at first, I was thinking maybe these are like the little bald doctors from Insomnia. And I got a little bit excited. I thought, oh, maybe, but it doesn't seem as though they are. They look exactly like Stephen King, which is mental. And they start talking about the Crimson King. They used to work for the Crimson King. He's losing it. And the reason that he's lost his mind is because he's been watching the progress that the quartet has been making. He saw them defeat the wolves in Wolves of the Cala. He saw Alguciento, the Battle of Alguciento, and how they stopped the beams from being broken and liberated the breakers. And this is maybe the second or the third time that we've heard that the Crimson King is a lunatic. And so, yeah, that's kind of funny. This is also like a really unusual scene, right? Because it reaffirms my belief that there is no purpose to go into the Dark Tower any longer, other than Roland. It just feels that it's his destiny, but it's not actually going to serve any purpose. He isn't going to save anything anymore. And actually, I think they said like the sigil on the side of his gun is one of the only things that could open the door and free the Crimson King. And by Roland going there, that is literally the only way that the Crimson King could actually still destroy the tower. So he's risking everything for nothing. Um, yeah, that's so strange. And then Roland takes out two of the triplets, and you know, they were annoying, right? I didn't really like them, so yeah, man. I don't get why Roland is still going forward, and also why is Susanna not stopping him? You know, why is she just going along with it? It doesn't make sense. So next we see Mordred, and he's really been growing up quickly. He's been getting protein from the rooks and been eating bugs. He's not a baby anymore. He's now like a young boy. He's kind of like a preteen sort of age or physicality. And I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know what direction this is going to go in. Oh God. La, la, la. Also, like Roland has got this really bad cough, and he's really suffering. They're all falling apart. Both Susanna and Roland. And I tell you something, man. If Roland dies of pneumonia, I don't think I'm not going to be able to handle it. I don't think. Susanna has this weird dream about Eddie wearing a Christmas hat, and he says to her the name Patrick Danville. I mean, we're getting close to the end. I, it makes me think Dandello and Patrick Danville were the same person. I keep expecting that. And he's going to have to introduce him soon in order for the introduction and whatever the resolution is to be satisfying, for him to play any meaningful part. He's going to have to get mentioned really soon. So, meanwhile, Mordred is really suffering. He hasn't made any proper preparations for the cold weather. He hasn't got any food left, and he's just sort of like holding on, just trying to get to Roland. Um, so next up in their journey, they meet this character called Joe Collins, who lives on Odds Lane. And as soon as they meet him, Roland and Susanna have started just laughing. And I know that something's up immediately. Like, why are we laughing? Eddie's gone, Jake's gone. We're almost at the tower. What are we laughing about? Something's not right with this guy. Why are we listening to stand-up comedy? You know? Why does this house have electricity? Why is there a fully stocked fridge? Why is this guy, Joe, so angry, visibly angry, when Susanna stands up and interrupts his kind of stand up comedy? What is going on? And also, there's a robot called Stuttering Bill. Stuttering Bill is basically the main protagonist in It, right? He's one of the kids from the Losers Club in It. And so is that a clue? You know? I don't know what's happening, but I like it. It's very good. It feels like atmospheric and creepy. Something's about to happen. I know it. Yeah. So now Roland is choking. Like Susanna's in the other room. Roland's laughing so much that he's choking. This is obviously some sort of ploy. And then the next chapter is called Patrick Danville. So this guy is Patrick Danville, right? So the what? Soon, everything becomes apparent. Susanna comes out of the bathroom, and she before she does, she picks up one of the Deus Ex Machinas that presumably Stephen King left behind, and it basically lets her know that this is Dandello or Dandelo. How do you pronounce that? And then when Susanna comes in the next room, she sees him like this creature huddled over Roland, just sucking up his energy as Roland just kind of chokes and laughs so much uncontrollably. Um, and this is when we got to look at his the real face of the creature, and he kind of seems like some sort of long lost cousin of it, right? The Pennywise, the clown. I really like this idea because it's funny. He's got, well, maybe he is. I mean, if I think about it, is this Pennywise? Could this be where Pennywise is living? That would be cool, wouldn't it? And he's got this robot called Stuttering Bill. So maybe it is, or maybe he just knows Pennywise. They hang out. um, yeah, is it possible that this is Pennywise? Maybe. But before we find out, Susanna takes him out, and the instant that she does, all of the glamour that he's been using falls away, and we get to see this house for what it really is. This isn't a place with electricity and a fridge stocked with nice food or anything like that. It's actually some old house, some dingy old place with rotten meat all over the place. That was actually a fantastic scene. I really liked it. Really atmospheric writing. I enjoyed that whole thing. And also, the more time goes on, the more I'm curious about Patrick Danville. I'm pretty sure now that Dandelo was not Patrick Danville. If he was, then oops. But this chapter is called Patrick Danville, so I think we're about to meet him. Yep. So Patrick Danville has been kept in the basement for a long time of Dandelo's little hovel. And man, he's been through a lot. He's had his tongue removed. He's about 17 years old now. He's had his tongue removed, and he has just endured unimaginable horror at the hands of this creature. He's kept him alive. He's been scaring him. He's been making him laugh, and just all of this emotion, this creature has just been sucking it up, and Patrick Danville is really just like a food source for this monster. That's the whole reason he's being kept alive, is so that this creature can come down and just feed on him. When they take Patrick upstairs, he's able to communicate, because he doesn't have a tongue, he's able to communicate through sketches. You remember I mentioned that in Insomnia, he was a bit of an artist, right? He was drawing Roland and everything. So he still is. He's still excellent at sketching, and they find a load of pads and some pencils with the eraser taken off, which is unusual. Why is that mentioned? Why is that happening? That it hasn't got the erasers on? Maybe it's that if he draws something, he's not allowed to make a mistake. I don't know. So I'm getting nervous for the ending, man. I'm getting really. Stuttering Bill comes back, the robot, and they travel together closer to the tower. I'm getting really nervous, man. Susanna, it seems like she's really struggling. She's really struggling with this journey, and she just can't go on any further. She keeps having dreams of Eddie, and she's envisioning a doorway to Eddie and Jake, and like there's hardly any book left, right? I mean, look, I can't believe I'm getting. So it seems like whatever Patrick Danville draws kind of comes to be. And the reason that Dandelo took away the erasers is that if he draws something and erases it, then it actually gets erased for real, right? So I mean, what an incredible power that is. If you think about it, he could erase the tower. He could erase the Crimson King. He could erase the beams, Like, why didn't he erase? Like, what I mean is, why didn't the Crimson King sort of kidnap him or take him and erase the beams? That would have been a nice shortcut. Did the Crimson King know about him? That's mad, isn't it? That's it. I mean, he's overpowered. Oh man. uh, um, Susanna says that she has to leave. It's time, and she has to be reunited with Eddie and Jake. Um, and she asks Oi. First of all, she asks Patrick Danville if he wants to come, and he sketches no, afraid to go someplace else. He's sort of afraid of the unknown, really. And then she asks Oi if he wants to come, and at this point, Susanna's kind of annoyed with Roland. She thinks that he's manipulating Patrick and also Oi as well to stay with him, and he says no, that's not true. And she lets Detta take over. Man, I really like Detta. I know she's crazy and everything, but she sort of says it like it is, and she she's a fantastic character. But then Roland says, "Look, I'm not having my last interaction with you be with Detta. I want to speak to Susanna, And so she comes back forward after he convinces her. He says, "Look, only you can convince Oi maybe to go back with you." And then so she comes back as Susanna and she says, "Oi, do you want to come back with me? Come see Jake." And Oi looks at her and he's kind of got those big eyes and he goes, "Jake?" And you can see that it's all he wants in the world is to see Jake again. But then he decides that he's going to stay with Roland. And he probably, feels like Roland needs him more. And Roland is basically begging Susanna to stay, but she can't. She can't do it. And she leaves them behind. I don't know what it is. I just feel so sad. You know, it now it's just Roland and Oi from the original quartet. And I can't help but feel like Oi isn't going to make it to the tower either. It's just everything's just slipping away. I don't know, man. I don't. Oh man. Oh man. I just, oh, God. Come on, man. Oi. This is what happens. Oh God. So this is what happens. Mordred, who has been poisoned by eating the horse meat, is eating some bad horse meat, and he manages to catch up with him while Roland's asleep. And Oi, who has stayed behind at the request of Jake to protect Roland, that's what Jake asked him to do. Um, he's doing his duty, and he just gets in between Roland and Mordred just as Mordred's about to get asleep in Roland, and he starts fighting with Mordred, who is more like powerful than he is. And even when he has a chance to get away, he doesn't. Roland's saying to him, "Oi, to me, to me." He's trying to like protect Oi, and Oi just keeps attacking and attacking, and even after his back is broken, he's still trying to attack Mordred. And um, Roland eventually, it takes too long in my opinion, but eventually he takes out Mordred, and then Roland walks over to Oi, and just before he dies, he licks his hand, and he looks up and he says, "Olan," and then dies. Why did that affect me more than Jake's death? Ah, man, it that really hurt quite a lot. like Roland taking out, just as a side note as well, Roland taking out Mordred, in a way feels a little bit anticlimactic. After such a big build up, it feels like he was easily taken out. Much in the same way that they quite easily were able to save the tower, and the man in black was quite easily taken out by Mordred. So, it feels like things are winding down rather than ramping up to a big climax. It feels like everything's just slowly winding down and we're just losing just little bits of everything. And we're just sort of stumbling to the finish line rather than charging towards the finish line, you know? Also, bloody Patrick Danville is useless. Like, he needs to help. He needs to contribute something, but that's the end of the quartet. When Roland buries Oy, he's kind of surprised at how little dirt it takes to cover his body. And he says, the body was far smaller than the heart it held. And that's probably one of my favorite lines in the whole series, to be honest. It made me think of my dog again, Oy always reminds me of my dog. And I think that's maybe why it hits so hard, That was heavy, that was heavy, man. Never thought I'd cry over a Billy Bumbler. So, my dog in the background, do you hear that? That's good timing. I'm feeling too many emotions, I'm telling you. There's just too many emotions. Oh, God, look at that. I'm nervous, I'm sad, I'm excited, it's too much, it's too much, honestly. All right, this is it. We're actually gonna, we're gonna reach the tower. We are going to reach the tower, like, now. Mate, look at that shelf behind me. You see that? This shelf here, along here, that's all the books that I read to get to this point. And it's bloody terrifying, isn't it? Like, there's so little left. Like, so they come up over the crest of a hill, and there it is. It's the fucking tower. It's the fucking Dark Tower. And you can see the beams where they're all coming together to support the tower. This is it. We've passed all this way across all this territory, all these landscapes, all these battles, and we're here at the Dark Tower, and something is about to happen. God, I sort of don't want to finish it. I just want to leave it there, but we got to keep going. There's a field surrounded by roses, and and then we see the Crimson King is in the tower, right? And he says, "Gunslinger!" screams the Crimson King. "Now you die!" He better bloody not. And he's throwing sneeches at him, which I've got to be honest, I've never really got used to. Yeah, I don't love the sneeches. I like the Ariza plates. Man, what am I doing? It's strange, right? Because the Crimson King is like this, not exactly like I expected. Like, he's like this scrawny old man with like a huge nose, and he's like jumping around like what do you call it, Yosemite Sam or something, just like jumping up and down. I'm just losing it. He's very energetic, much more. I thought he would be this kind of dark, ominous presence, but nah, man, like, he's just raging. And he's trapped at the top of the tower, as we knew he would be. Just not at all how I pictured him, really. So Roland tells Patrick that he should draw yonder man. So it seems, I said, didn't I? I said that he could erase the Crimson King. St- Stephen King is Joe. All right. Instant reaction. I don't know. I finished it, right? I'm gonna talk about everything that happens. I don't know how I feel. I don't know if I don't know exactly how I feel in this moment. Do you know what I mean? It's like I think this is one where I need to think. I need to think. I can't just give it like a. I want to give like an instant reaction. Instant reaction is like what, like what? I don't like. But is it good or is it like not? I don't know. I need to think. I probably need to read it. I probably need to read the last. I'll come back tomorrow. I'll set up the camera and I'll come back tomorrow and I'll just add to this review. All right. Okay. So thoughts. By the way, I'm wearing a blue chambray shirt in honor of Stephen King. So I never wore. I didn't even know what a chambray shirt was. Really, honestly, but I ordered one because he's always mentioning his characters wear blue chambray shirts. So I thought it was funny. So I'll be negative, I guess, first, and then I'll do the positives because I have like real mixed feelings. Just to give you a heads up, like I think overall I liked this ending. I liked the cyclical nature of it, and I'll talk a bit more about that. But I'll just say this: there was a lot of anticlimax in this book throughout the whole thing. Right? You had the anticlimax, I think, with the Man in Black. He didn't really get the ending that I feel like he deserved. You had that anticlimax with saving the tower. That they did that kind of almost halfway through the book in Algul Siento. I'm still really self-conscious whenever I say that name because I think I'm saying it wrong. Um, and then there was an anticlimax, I thought, with Mordred, even though Oi being a hero was fantastic and so emotional. And then finally the anticlimax with the Crimson King, who he just turned out to be a crazy old man. What is his power exactly? I, I don't know. But I feel like it was a nice idea that in the final climax, Roland has to overcome the importance of that he kind of placed on destiny by allowing Patrick Danville to have this big moment and someone else basically to defeat his enemy for him. But I have a I guess I have a problem not with the outcome and not with the resolution, but with the execution of it. You know, Patrick Danville is a character that we met in Insomnia, and he's not a major character in that book. He's a character that's kind of just added on at the end. As a little boy, we get to see him, and he's drawing a picture of Roland. And in this book, he is not a major character in this book. He has a major role to play, but he's not a major character. He doesn't get mentioned until, I mean, you just saw. I read it yesterday, the last couple of 100 pages, and so I think it's the last 100 pages in a massive series. So I just really see him as some random guy. He's not really part of the quartet. And this isn't the same as like Father Callahan or Ted Broadrigan or one of the other major side characters coming back. And yet he is the one that takes out the Crimson King. And I know that there's like a lot of emphasis that's placed on a Deus Ex Machina. And you could say, well, Jay, you're missing the point. This is about Stephen King dropping little Deus Ex Machinas to help him out all the time. I know, but just because you're aware of it, does it mean that it's okay? I don't know. I don't know. And remember, don't get too annoyed, because this is the part where I'm talking about the stuff I didn't like, and I will talk about the stuff I did like as well. Just yeah, Patrick Danville in the series, he's hardly ever featured, and yet he has what is, in my opinion, the biggest role to fulfill. The thing that irks me about it a little bit is that Insomnia came out in 1994, and after that, Stephen King published Wizard and Glass, Song of Susanna, The Dark Tower, obviously. And so Stephen King had 20 years, 2 decades to introduce us, or not to introduce us, but to properly introduce us, I guess, or to give a full backstory to Patrick Danville. And just let us know him, in the same way that we got to know Father Callahan, for example. He could have easily brought in Danville in earlier books, couldn't he? He could have had his own book. The concept of being able to draw and erase is an interesting concept. Patrick Danville could have had his own book. Or just been heavily featured in another book. Like I say, 2 decades is a lot of time, especially if you're Stephen King, who is so prolific. It could have been a short story. It could have been he could have been featured earlier in the season, been introduced in Song of Susanna. It would have been cool to see him introduced as one of the major characters in that. But no, we don't get that. He's not even introduced early in this book either. He just kind of is introduced, has a couple of scenes, saves the universe, and then goes away. And isn't that bizarre? I do like the way that he took out the Crimson King. I thought that was really cool, really unique and original. And I just think that it felt unearned, It just felt unearned. We've only seen him demonstrate these powers, or this power, once. And yeah, but that is one of the problems that I had with the ending, was just the Crimson King, kind of weak, all the villains kind of weak. Mordred's getting taken out by a Billy Bumbler, and Roland was the one that finished him off, but still he's getting taken down by a Billy Bumbler. Mordred took out the Man in Black. He's getting taken out by what is effectively a baby that can turn into a spider. And the Crimson King is just wiped out by Patrick Danville, someone that couldn't defeat Dandelo. So yeah, it's just the villains are weak in this book. What I really liked was after this. Everything that came after this, I kind of liked. Roland approaching the Dark Tower, and and there's a line that says, "Now comes Roland to the Dark Tower." And I love when he's listing all of the names of the fallen, and I'm just going to read them here, just because it's just. He says he comes in the name of Stephen Deshane, Gabrielle Deshane, Cortland Andrus, Cuthbert Allgood, Elaine Johns, Jamie DeCurry, Vanna the Wise, I think it's Hax the Cook, David the Hawk, Susan Delgado, Shimi got a mention, wicked, Per Callahan, He of Jerusalem's Lot, Ted Brautigan, Dinky Earnshaw, that's nice. Dinky got a mention as well. Aunt Talitha, she of River Crossing, and I will lay her cross here as I was bid. Remember that? A river crossing? Dope. Stephen King, he of Maine. Oi the Brave, Eddie Dean, Susanna Dean, and Jake Chambers, whom I call my own true son. Epic. I loved that bit. I just reading that, it was like I was just having the whole of the Dark Tower series and all of the books that I read along the way. It was like there was all flashing before my eyes. It felt really like a good payoff. I loved that part. I just felt like, I was just reliving the whole series. Just boom, 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 boom. Remember this, remember this, remember this, remember this. I really liked the ending that Susanna and Eddie and Jake were given. Although, again, it's one of those things where it's bittersweet. It's so lovely that they all get to be together and they're sort of aware of one another. They have this deep connection, but also it's kind of sad, right? Because they don't remember Roland, and Susanna starts to forget about the epic journey that they all took together. But somehow they still have this feeling of being a quartet. But yeah, that was a little bit sad for me. But also just nice. They've got each other, right? So that is at least a happy kind of an ending. And then Stephen King, as he likes to do sometimes, kind of jumps in and reminds us that we're reading a book. And he says, listen, I hope you've enjoyed the book so far, folks. And you can stop reading now because this ending, not everyone's going to be happy with it. And obviously at this stage, I'm really nervous, right? I was really nervous reading that part because and I'm not alone in this, but I find Stephen King's endings to be hit or miss. And so, I was a little bit nervous when he said, turn back now because you might not like this ending. He passes by the balcony where the Crimson King is still kind of trapped because although Patrick Danville was able to erase him, he couldn't erase his eyes. So that was great imagery, right? It's just like a pair of red eyes looking through at Roland, unable to communicate to him, unable to physically do anything, but just watching and observing what Roland's going to do, kind of with this impotent rage. That was actually really a cool thing. And Roland just kind of looks at him and walks past him like. And then I really liked, kind of similar to when he's calling out all of the names of the fallen, how as he ascends the tower, he is reliving some of the most pivotal moments in his life. And all of the things that kind of shaped him and shaped his journey. And then he comes across Susan Delgado and the moment where she was burned alive. And it's one of those moments that really shook him and set him on the path with an unshakable conviction that he must reach the tower at all costs. That was the big turning point in his life, and that was difficult to relive. For obviously for Roland, but also for me. I think for all readers, anyone that read Wizard and Glass, they probably were affected in some way. Even people that didn't like Wizard and Glass, I think that they probably were affected at least by that scene and the injustice of it. And bloody Rhea the Coos, hate Rhea. By the way, what happened to Rhea? She's still out there, is she? She's gonna get it. And then when he finally reaches the top of the tower and steps through the door, and it's like car is a wheel, right? It just all starts again. I'm not going to say I didn't like it. I'm not going to say I loved it. But I am going to say that it was fitting, and it's an ending unlike any other I've ever read. It's an experience of a book unlike any other that I've ever experienced. And for that, I have to be grateful for Stephen King. That is a gift, right? To give someone an experience that they're never going to forget, as long as it's not horrific, right? That's a gift, and I am grateful for that. Also, it's totally up for interpretation, and it makes me as a reader think about the ending. It doesn't just offer the ending on a silver platter, and so that's good as well, because you get to ponder on it and savor the ending. So that's something that's excellent about it as well. I'll just say this though, that there is one vital ingredient that I personally feel is missing, and everyone has different tastes, right? But if it had been included, this one ingredient, I feel like to my tastes, this would have been 10 times better of an ending. And that vital ingredient is choice. I think it would have been so cool if Roland reaches the top of the tower and he has a chance to learn the secrets of the tower. He has a chance to fulfill his destiny, or he can go back to the beginning. And giving him the choice between maybe two doorways would have been more impactful, I think. Now, let me explain what I mean by that, right? So, over the course of this series, we've been introduced to a character in Roland who began as just a stone cold killer. He was just had a singleness of focus, and that was reach the tower, get to the tower, hunt down the man in black. And then over time, I mean, think about what he did in Tull, right? What he did in Tull, I was like, wow, this is the hero, like some of these are children. And he's just like, bang, 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 not even thinking about it. He'll shoot anyway, you know what he did. You know what he did. But then over time, we've witnessed him kind of let his guard down and embrace his role as a mentor and like a father figure, as a protector. And whereas before he wouldn't let anyone in, he let Jake fall. He's like, this is not important to me. The only thing that matters to me is the tower. And then over time, he's grown softer, and that softness has made him strong. Like, I just feel like it would have been so cool if, let's say, keep most things the same, but Jake has survived. And again, this is just wish fulfillment for me and for my tastes. And so, I'm not saying that I can come up with a better ending. I'm just saying for my own tastes, right? Every reader has their own preferences. But I personally just thought it would have been so cool, say, like if Jake and Roland are the last survivors of the quartet. They make it up to the top of the tower, and the man in black is there, right? And he's saying, well, you made it. Here it is, the doorway to the Dark Tower. And the Crimson King is there, and he doesn't want Roland to go through the doorway. And so he gives Roland a choice. He's kind of like looking through the doorway. He's just like a pair of piercing eyes. And he gives Roland a choice. Listen, you can go through the doorway, or you can go back to the beginning. You can go back and fix all of the mistakes that you made. And then Jake kind of looks at him and says, we can go back and save Eddie. We can save Susanna, and we can save Oi. And Roland's kind of like, the tower. I need the tower. And the Crimson King says, you can have the tower, but just not now. I will even give you another element in your quest. I'll give you the Horn of Eld. You can use this, and you can come back again, but just don't walk through the door now. Go back. And he's kind of given that choice, he's given that temptation, and then suddenly Jake is in peril again. Maybe the Crimson King, in one last ditch effort, tries to take Jake away, and Roland's looking back at Jake, and the man in black is saying, Roland, don't do this. come on, this is your destiny. Walk through this door. Come through the door with me, brother. You know, this is what it's all been about. And the Crimson King's saying, no, 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 don't you do it. It's like deja vu all over again. Jake needs him. The man in black is mocking him, just like in the Gunslinger. And then Roland has to make a choice. And Jake is just slipping. All of a sudden, he falls. And as he's falling, he says, there are other worlds than these. And Roland turns around and he just runs at Jake, dives down after him. You hear the man in black screaming. You hear the Crimson King laughing as he sees Jake slip through a portal into another world. And then Roland slips in after him. He lands and he wakes up and he's back in the desert. And again, I'm not Stephen King. So, who am I? But I'm just saying, I'm not even saying that ending is better, right? I'm just saying that for me personally, it would have given me more satisfaction if Roland's character arc and his growth as a character would have played more of a role in contributing to the ending and to a decision that was made, rather than the ending kind of just Roland like stumbling into an ending, right? I think having characters make difficult decisions is really the main reason that I love fiction, is to see people that are put in impossible positions and they need to make a decision, and then you get to find out, who are they? Who is this person? That's why characters are very interesting to me. I actually love the thought of Roland as this like eternal character who is going through this cycle over and over again. He's maintaining the order of the world and protecting us from the collapse of the Dark Tower. I love that. He's kind of like another version of like Sisyphus. Is that from mythology? Who's always pushing the boulder up the mountain just to watch it roll back down the mountain and have to go back down and push it back up. Also, there is a ray of hope at the end of this story as well, because now Roland has the Horn of Eld, which he didn't have in the original Gunslinger. And so I think that he's supposed to blow the horn at the foot of the tower. He didn't have it before, he has it now. So maybe this is his last journey to the Dark Tower, and this is the time he'll get it right. It also makes me curious as well, and I've been thinking a lot about this, about the number 19, right? I actually was expecting, one of my theories was that the reason that the number 19 is so relevant is that this is the 19th journey to the Dark Tower. And so that's why they're seeing 19 all over the place. And this time when he goes through and he meets Eddie and Susanna and Jake and everything, now everyone's going to be saying 20. I thought that, I thought there might have been something like that at the end. That I think that would have been cool to kind of find out the relevance of the number 19. And I suppose the big question of this video and the big question of this whole series is, what did you think of the ending? Did it satisfy you? How did it sit with you? How did you interpret the meaning of the ending? What does it mean to you? And what did you get from it? I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments below. And by the way, don't hold back. Tell me why my ending is so stupid. I want to know, because that's what this channel is all about, going on journeys together. And man, this has just been an epic journey, right? I'm so sad that it's come to an end, but I'm also happy as well. I've got to experience Stephen King in what I consider to be such an epic way, like just one after the other. And again, there has been high notes and low notes. Some of these books, The Stand, oh my God, The Stand, so good. It, so good. Salem's Lot, so good. That's not even mentioning The Dark Tower series, The Wastelands, Wizard and Glass. Oh my God, it's amazing. And I'll just give you my undiluted opinion about the ending now that I've had a day to kind of think and really ponder on it. Did I like the ending? Yes, I did. I did like the ending. Reading Stephen King over the course of this last year has actually changed my perspective as a reader. When I read books, you might have recognized a pattern, is that I'm always trying to work out how is this going to influence the ending? How is this going to be resolved? How are they going to overcome this problem? And you just can't read that way when you read Stephen King. You cannot, because he doesn't write that way. He writes without an ending in mind. He is discovering the narrative as he goes, and he's discovering it along with us. And so we just get to take the ride, and he focuses way more on the journey than on the destination. And so I think with that in mind, it's fitting that we ended up where we started. If you've been taking this journey along with me, especially people that have been there since the beginning, right? I just want to say thank you so much. You never spoiled it. You were always there, kind of like wishing that I would enjoy these books and giving me insightful information about it without ever spoiling anything. I got to take this journey with you, and in that way, I consider you a part of us to be like quartet. And I'm just so glad that we got to meet on the path of the beam together. It's really a unique experience for me. But I would say it doesn't have to be the end of our journey together. I know one thing for sure, and that is that I will miss all of these characters so deeply. I love them, and I already feel a bit of an empty space where they were. It's just so painful. But there are other worlds than these. I have a bunch of plans for this year's reading, including rereading The Gunslinger. In the context of this, it seems to make sense that I would reread The Gunslinger. Also, some more Stephen King stuff, like I'm going to be reading The Shining, Pet Sematary, and a bunch of other Stephen King stuff, just because, we're Calvins and we need to always make sure that we're connecting all of the dots between all of his works and the larger multiverse. And I'm going to be reading the Red Rising series, Joe Abercrombie's First Law series. If you'd like to see my video of me ranking the Dark Tower series from which I preferred to which the ones that I didn't like as much, then you can click up here. Oh, man, thank you so much for joining me on this journey. Long days and pleasant nights. And as always, happy reading. Whew, we did it.